Hi, I'm Jennifer Schlickburn, the game pioneer from the Game Brain podcast, and I'm here today to talk about Keyflower and a little story that goes with me and Keyflower. Keyflower is an auction game, and it's a very mean auction game, even though, this looks so pleasant. It's the Mayflower, but Keyflower. And everybody's nice colors and everything. But really, it's pretty mean. So, because basically, you're putting out, actually, there are tiles that are already put out. And so, you put out meeples, and then other people can come along and put out, let's say someone puts out meeple to get this tile. Someone else comes along on this side, puts out more meeples. Your meeple is screwed. But one of the cool things about Keyflower is that not only are you competing for the tile, but you know what? You can just come along, as long as the colors match, generally, and put your meeple here and get what's here. Okay? Now, the thing is, whoever wins the tile is going to take this meeple, but you've got your stuff without perhaps not too much of a commitment. Now, I really think this whole flow of the game makes Keyflower a very special game, The thing is, though, I'll tell you the story. Back in 2013, I went to BGGCon, and Richard Breeze, who is the publisher, Sebastian Bleasdale and Richard designed the game. So Richard was there, and me and a friend sat down with him for him to demo the game to us. What's this about? So he demoed the game, and I know at least I bought it. I'm not sure if my friend did, but, we played it for a while, and then I sold it. Well, it just so happened, a friend of mine who is, at that time, was part of the Strategicon team, had invited Richard to Strategicon, which is the big Los Angeles board game convention. He's invited them for February, and BGGCon is in November. So it turns out that my friend who invited Richard Breeze could not take Richard on the usual kind of designer day that Strategicon gave out of state and out of country, of course. Richard is British, and so my friend asked me to do it. So I don't know if people who are watching have ever heard or played Richard's game Reef Encounter, but it turned out that when the special guests come, they can choose where they want to go. So where Richard wanted to go was to an aquarium. So we have a decent aquarium in Long Beach. So we went there, and, he saw all the stuff and went to lunch, and then I took him to Huntington Botanical Gardens and libraries for the rest of the day. So then, there was the con, and then it turned out that Richard was going to stay an extra day. He said, I'm going to go downtown and see what that is like. And you're like, or I was like, you don't want to go to downtown Los Angeles because it's boring. So, I invited him to my home instead. So he came, and my collection, as you can see, and it's always been like this, it's on a bunch of shelves. And he's like, well, what happened to Keyflower? I'm like, the game felt really arbitrary. It just wasn't that much fun. So I sold it. He kind of gives me a small British frown. So, later on that day, as I was taking him back to the hotel, he invited me to London to stay with him and his dad in his dad's house. And I accepted, I had never been. In fact, I'd never been to any part of Europe, and I certainly had never been to London. So after, some discussion and some thought, I accepted. So that was when I went, and there was a con being given while I was there, and I got to meet Mike Siggins. Mike is like the father of Eurogaming for many of us, because in the 80s and early 90s, it was impossible to find translations for games, and Mike had them on his website. So I had known, and he also had a blog, I think. And so I had interacted with Mike over the years, and it was great to see him. In fact, the highlight of the trip was Mike and I and Richard just spending an entire afternoon together in Mike's home. And so while I was there, I was, Richard and I were discussing Keyflower, and I said, the rule that we always play with is once seen, always seen. Because in the usual game, no matter what, there's always boats that have meeples on them, and everybody chooses their boat. And then in the rules, they take their choices and they put them behind their screen, right? And so, I have no memory, but other people do. And so I told them, I said, when I played, I didn't know what other people had. So when I'm making bids, I'm like, oh, well, I sure hope this can work. And a lot of times the bid didn't work, and it just wasn't fun for me. And so I explained to Richard my usual house rule, which is once seen, always seen, meaning that when people took the meeples off the boat, then they were put in front of the shield. Of course, if you got meeples any other way where the other players couldn't see, then those went behind the shield. Well, Richard was doubtful that that rule would work with Keyflower, but then after playing a couple times, he says, yeah, this is the gamer variant. Well, I'm a gamer, so it worked fine for me. So he introduced those rules as a variant in the first expansion for Keyflower and the farmers. And so, we only play it that way now, but I was happy to see it introduced as a variant. And then in the merchants, he put my name to it. This is the Jennifer Schlickburn variant that once you take the meeples off the boats, the meeples go in front. Well, then the game becomes really interesting because, okay, now I'm going to I see over there that Paul has 3 reds. Well, if he wants this, he's going to have to spend them. And maybe Paul does, and maybe Paul doesn't. But it adds up really, for me, important strategic layer to the game. So, the other thing that's great about this game, it plays great at all player numbers. Sure, at 6 players, you're going to have a lot of downtime because it's not simultaneous. It's still turn by turn. But still, it is an enjoyable experience. Unlike some games where, hey, if it says to the 6, it's either bad at 2 or bad at 6, right? So I'm fairly sure Keyflower is pretty easy to find. If you haven't tried it, I believe it's on Board Game Arena, noting that the variant there is not implemented. But at least you could get a nice taste of it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Have a great week. Thanks for watching.